King George Medical University, Lucknow, as an associate professor. He is the author of two books, Daffodils, a bouquet of short stories, and The Battle of Panchvati and Other Stories from Indian Scriptures. Next up, we have Varun Gupta, who was bred for the business world, a past life spent studying finance at the New York University and working as consultant for Deloitte. Obsessed with storytelling, Varun wrote his first book, Bhagwan Ke Pakwan, which was a cookery cum travel narrative through the faiths and foods of India. His second book, Chotu, is a graphic novel that chronicles the events of the partition with an interesting perspective. We'll also be joined by Siddharth Kanatil, who's a banking professional with a passion for fiction and writing. Born and raised in Kolkata, he did his MBA and worked in different parts of the country before settling down in Bangalore. He has written short stories before, and A Mina Flies is his first novel. He has some issues technical, so he'll just join us in the session. And since we have a limited window of time, I think let us deep dive into the discussion. And the first question that I have for the panel is that do everyone agree that the topic which we have should be called historical fiction, or should it be called as our cultural heritage? So anyone can start. We can. It's a discussion, so we can have anyone jumping in.
Okay, I'll go first, Siddhant, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
See, there is this dichotomy between Hindi and English. When we are talking about our literature, we tend to think in our mother tongue, and when you convert that segment of literature, that the term for that segment of literature into English, the meaning may not be transported. So fiction per se does not have a word in Hindi, which is my mother tongue, or even in Sanskrit. So suppose you are talking about Ramayana and Mahabharata. So if you are writing stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata and you label that as mythology and fiction, now myth itself means non-true, and fiction also means something which is made up, which is not what Ramayana and Itihas and Mahabharata are labeled as when we are talking in Hindi. When we are talking in Hindi, it is Itihas. Now, Itihas is not history. This is what happens when you translate words from two languages. So Itihas simply means it happened like this. So it happened like this could be true, and it could be a kernel of truth with the tapestry of little fiction to make it good. So that's why this term mythological fiction, it makes one think that it is all made up, which may actually not be true, and which does not actually convey the meaning which Itihas does, but people then don't know. So the earlier we start using these terms, the better it is.
Right. Varun and Vishwas, what is your take on the point?
Vishwas, want to go ahead? I might have a very different perspective on this, and I think my book is also a slightly different genre.
Yep.
Do you want to go ahead? Sorry.
You can go ahead, no problem.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a toss-up. I think Chotu as a book, that as it exists, is a book that is grounded in historical events, but with the actual finesse of fiction. I mean, it's about a monkey who goes searching for aloo ka paranthas in Chandni Chowk. So obviously there is the storytelling aspect that's woven into it. So I think the one thing that we have to be careful of is that when we are telling stories, we have to also understand history as a term is very debatable, right? History over generations is, India has an oral tradition that got passed on before written traditions. And so what was history? Even if you look at Roman Empire, Greek empires, there's the term, the victor writes the history, right? And so the perspective of history itself changes over years. And so I think we have to be careful of, as we write books in the modern era, how grounded in history is this, or does it have fictional aspects? And for me, writing a book like Chotu, historical fiction, I think is a great word. But when I think what Divya said with mythology is quite a warranted point. I think that's another one of your questions that might come up. Mythology, folklore, legend. Each of these words have very detailed nuances to it, and I think we have to be careful of what each of those mean.
Right. Vishwas, you can
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, see, from my perspective, when I look back, right, all these terms, they're all fine, right? You can call it whatever you want, but if you look back, what we have been as a nation, I think we have been a nation of um, people who have always looked up to superheroes. Be it from the beginning, we have tried to basically fantasize or romanticize a particular set of heroism, and there's a lot of flavor of realism as well in that, which I like to believe, because in our history, what I believe is that mythology is like interwoven with everything that we've got, and that has like very very rich cultural heritage, that what I like to say that has come out, and gives a very amazing kind of pot boiler of a situation for all our authors to like pick from there and write. And that's amazing for us, because we can always look at making it extremely, like go into deep research and make it very very realistic and to the point. Of course we can do that, or we can take something as material and then write on top of it, bring your own imagination, fictionalize it, or create it from a mythological perspective, spiritual perspective. And I think India as a land has been, and of course Hinduism and the whole thing, our ethos, have been that we have given the kind of uh, you know the freedom to think and have that kind of expression that we would like to do in terms of everything, the writing, right? So so whatever the terminology that is there, it's great, but I feel that as a nation, we have been huge fan following from thousands of years of superheroes, and we like to have fiction plus history, mythology. We like to have all of that together.
Right. So Siddharth has joined us. So we're just on our first topic of discussion, and I would love your take on the point as well. So we were discussing that this particular genre that we are talking about, should it be actually called historical fiction, or can we call it as our cultural heritage?
Well, I would say cultural heritage is always, if the question was to me, I would say cultural heritage is always has a bit of fiction to it, to make the heritage, a bit more exciting, a bit more enjoyable, probably, and that contributes to the heritage being carried forward in a more excited way. So it's a bit of both.
Right. So, Varun, I would like to ask you this question: that why did you choose to write about such a sensitive topic, using a very specific element, which is dark humor? Is there a specific reason behind it?
Yeah, I think humor is a fundamental of storytelling. When we talk about certain things, like the partition as it exists in today's world, I feel like it's still a very sensitive, it's a very taboo topic still. But the idea is the longer we treat an event as taboo, the longer it takes for us as a nation to start unpacking the feelings and the sentiments and the experiences people had during that time. So the idea is there's two types of humor, right? There's a humor that makes light of situations, or there's a humor that can circumvent a situation. So the humor in Chotu is very much around the situation, as I explained. Aloo ka paranthas take a very pivotal role in the story. It's about animals in Chandni Chowk, a proverbial animal kingdom. But the humor exists so that as a reader, you can go on a journey. You can delve into topics that might be sensitive, but also allow you to captivate and go on that experience. And so I think humor in storytelling is just a very important aspect of conveying themes or ethics or moralities.
Right. This is actually an interesting perspective because I have read your books, and all four of you write in a very different manner. So, Vishwas has a very deep storytelling in mythology. Varun took humor as an element. So, what do you think actually makes the historical fiction tick in current times, and why do people actually prefer reading mythological fiction nowadays?
खाना नहीं नहीं भूख लग रही है
Can we have the other people unmute? Yeah, anyone can take this question. What makes the historical fiction tick in current times, and why do people actually prefer picking up a book nowadays on this particular genre?
I can jump right in really quickly. For me, I think we have such a rich tapestry. As Vishwas was saying, there are so many events in history for India to unpack and uncover. And I think one great thing about historical fiction is it lays a base for history. It allows us to tap into events of the past. And the fiction is the narrative, the story that actually captivates and takes you on a journey. But I think for me, it was the world building of the time of 1947 was something that I enjoyed doing as a writer.
I think, Siddhant, that people really want to, connect with their cultural heritage, with their, so to say, mythological heritage. But it is not easy. See, if you want to start reading your mythological, your epics or your legends or your Ramayana and Mahabharata, it is not easy to do that. That is where this fiction plays a great role. It is easy to read, it is in contemporary language, and it sometimes it gives it a twist which makes no sense at all, but that is besides the point. The thing is that people want to read about these characters. See, everyone who lives in India has heard of Ram and Sita and Hanuman and Lakshman. They may not know the whole story, so they want to read about those characters, but no one has the time or the patience, or no one wants to drudge through thick books which are written in a difficult way. That is the gap that this mythological fiction fills, and that is why this segment has suddenly shot up. That people really like to read about these things, but in a lighter way. Like Varun said, that people don't want to read serious stuff. Not many of them. Say 95% of the people would like to read it in a lighter way. So we have to supply that those mythological stories, those stories from the epics, from the legends, in a lighter ways, to at least get people interested in that. Once you are hooked onto it, maybe you'll pick up the real stuff. So I think
Right.
it fills that gap, that desire of the people to tap into their past, tap into their cultural heritage without actually burdening themselves.
Absolutely. Siddharth, I would say that when it comes to historical fiction, it's only when we understand the events that led up to the present day do we have a perspective on what is happening right now, and would we have a forecasting power as to where we are going or what we can expect in the coming days. If we don't appreciate where we come from, so how do we appreciate or understand where we are going? So it gives the reader a perspective on the times. That is another importance of historical fiction.
Right.
Okay, so just from my perspective, right, if you look at it, we've all grown up, of course, listening to the stories, mythology, and then we have that inherent kind of a need to listen to Indian stories. That's what we relate to, right? And then I think the authors now have very cleverly trying to make it more relatable. There's a new wave of thinking. There's a freshness of how people are creating these characters. They're making them more approachable, more believable. Especially when, of course, when I wrote my book, The Age of Kalki trilogy. For me, it's very different because I had to create something, a character where is written long back in time, but he comes in the future, right? So I had to make this character super cool and make it so Indian at the same time, make it like a standard of a Hollywood kind of a the aura around it, have a great storytelling that is deeply rooted in Indian philosophy and ethos. You know what I'm trying to talk about? I'm trying to talk about taking the deep Indian culture and elevating it to the international levels. That's what I'm talking about. So that's
Okay.
what is happening right now, right? We don't have dearth of storytelling here. We don't have dearth of creating the talent to create the Iron Mans, or those the Disney. What it creates a huge amount of fuss over these small little things like Ant-Man and all. You name a small little thing, there is a man for it. There's a fat man, there's an Ant-Man. You will not believe what all is there, right? And I was like, when I looked at it, I was like, guys, we need to have our own superheroes. We already have them. Like, how do we create it to such amazing level where it starts making a sense for the international audience, right? So that's been my humble attempt of creating a science fiction and technology and geopolitical stuff, and take it back to like a deep rooted Kalki Purana, and then create a fabric of it and write on top of it. So that's make it mine is just one of the examples. So I'm sure like everybody here, they have their own way of doing it. That's amazing. That's what we want. We want layers and layers of things to be written on top of mythology, stories,
Right. So,
what is
Vishwas,
happening
my
now. That's
next question actually is to you, because when I read your book, as you mentioned, it is based on it has a lot of science fiction
yeah.
elements as well. So what do you think is actually the significance of Kalki in modern times?
This when I look at Kalki, it's this in my opinion, we people correlate with Kalki so much because um, people believe that there needs to be somebody who's going to disrupt things around you to change the world, to make it a better place. And to do that, you need like a person who's going to break all the system or the dogmas and whatever you have right now and rebuild it, right? And all of us, like at some level, correlate that character inside us. We feel that okay, we want to be that. It's an aspirational kind of a character. But people have treated it in a very different way. They have written it about in the past. But I think what I believe is that if the cat comes in, it's going to be the future, and that's going to be the near future. So it makes it so much more relatable, and it's like taking ancient secret societies and your books that are there that that talk about ancient Indian knowledge about science and technology and what we had achieved like 10,000 years back. What if India had produced a civilization that had technologies like 100 times more powerful, 1,000 times more advanced, but it's completely forgotten. Now it comes back again in the future, right? So what is going to happen, right? So that's what my book is all about. Of course, it creates a Kali Yuga of its own sort. The dark times that are there, that Kalki, and he has to be like this simple man who if God was like just a mortal, right? How does the
Right.
journey is going to be? That's what the journey itself is, the thrill here, right? So that's what
Right.
makes it very relatable, and that's why I think a lot of people have really liked the whole character and the look and feel that I have given. And of course, there's a lot of machines and AI and all of that makes it super cool.
Right. So, one thing that I've noticed in historical fiction is that a lot of research goes into it, and there are some authors who have actually listed out a lot of resources. And I have talked to Varod as well, and I know that these guys also did a lot of research. Same has gone for Dr. Upadhyay, Vishwas, and Siddharth as well. So, what is the level of research that you have to actually undertake before even idea of a story actually seeds and comes into play? So this is a question to everybody. So anybody can start.
Siddhant, I see my book is based in the 1850s, in the mid-Victorian era. And one lucky thing for me is that there are tons of data and facts available for that era. So it was relatively easy for me to get sources for that. There are tons of free data stores, archives, government archives, loading all sorts of facts and data on the mid-Victorian age. So it was easy for me to understand how Western societies came, how they settled in India and China in a big way, how they did business, how that impacted the Indian societies, how that impacted the relations between the communities in Indian society and such. So, and thus I stay out of Bangalore, and thus National Library of Bangalore here, they have an amazing collection of books, which again, contribute to my research. So when it comes to modern history, the 1850s or Varud's 1947, I believe research is much more easier than, researching for a more ancient time period.
Right.
I'll tell you, Siddhant, as far as I am concerned, I do very little research because I am doing it all the time. See, it is my hobby. It is my favorite pastime to read the things I write about. See, so all the research that I require is right here. So anytime I get time, I'm always reading this. But yes, when you actually get down to writing the book, there will be things that you forget. There will be figures, name of a person, name of a place. Then you have to, go back to the book or open your laptop and find it. But besides that, for me, it's a daily thing. So by that time, it's like you're putting things inside the pot, and the pot is bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. By the time that pot is full, you are ready to write the book. And that is when I know that I have to write it now. I cannot take it anymore. This has to come out now. So that research is a daily hobby. So that doesn't look like research to me.
Right. Varud, Vishwas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, anyone can answer.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, I completely agree. 1947 as a time period, it's relatively closer to us, so the access to information was there. But even then, over the 2 years of putting the book together, I felt like research was an ongoing process. Not only because of time period and historical events, but perspectives, really getting into the experiences of people. And I think you met Ayushi at the launch. How like the illustrations of the time period, I don't know if people can see, but like the illustrations of the time period was a super important thing for the book. And no one's really recreated 1947 Chandni Chowk. And so there was a lot of pouring through archives and finding images through the time that we had to do. But I think I agree with both the people that on one hand, you do a bulk of research, but also research happens throughout. Like research is constantly ongoing. You forget about things. You have new inspirations come along the way and you're like, oh, wow, this is a great character. This is a great setting. And then you jump back into the research. And then you find a completely tangential storyline that changes the entire story that you began with, and you go into research again. So I mean, research, especially for historical fiction, is just happening all the time for me.
Yeah, so that's really good to see your book, though. I'm interested to read that. A lot of graphical stuff is always interesting. So yeah, from my perspective, I like to imagine a lot of things, of course, and then it's like a painting, right? You like to paint your characters, your the scenes, and I usually kind of live in that kind of parallel universe I create for myself, and I'm always with the characters. And once I become the villain, once I become the hero, or the side character, or whatever, right? And just try to live through those moments because I write because I love to write. It's I don't write it because I have to write for others. That's the difference. Maybe that's why I take so much time to write my books, and I do it because it's my passion. And maybe escapism as well. I don't know. I just like to escape to another dimension. I like it that way. And of course, I do research, and I looked through a lot of mythology, and it was really interesting. A lot of tiny little stories about different characters and what happens to the Rakshasas, and how does like this the gods versus the Rakshasas kind of a thing. How do they defeat them, and how does the Rakshasas have this kind of a very amazing kind of weapons with them? What are the different kind of weapons they have? It's so amazing, right? So and then I compare that with what's happening today and what's going to happen in the future, like Star Wars, and what did they do here. And I look at that and they draw the parallels. It is so amazing. I feel like I should just quit everything. Of course, I'm like an entrepreneur as well. I run two companies. I'm so busy during the day, and during the evening I write sometimes, and I'm a very erratic writer. I just hope that sometimes I feel I just quit everything and just write. But I don't know. That maybe in a few years I'll do that. Yeah. So I read a lot on the internet, tiny little things, like a lot of myths. A lot of myths are there on the internet. For example, secret societies in ancient India, right? Like nine men, or some society to like protect the knowledge of India, and who are the people there, like members of this kind of in secret societies, things like that. I love reading those things, and then sometimes I use them in my own flavor in my book, and of course they're very well researched. I write every book I write. I write about business. I write about technology, and because I'm a tech guy, it comes naturally to me. I just write because I'm an engineer. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's how it is.
that's actually an
Yeah.
interesting perspective, because I realize that all four of you have a very different sort of a research methodology, and yet
Yeah, I
it
can see that.
combines to a very interesting output, because all of your books are very, very interesting. So that I was reading the blurb of your book, and it's, as you mentioned, it's based in the 1850s. So, how have you actually incorporated that info in your book and made it relevant to the story?
Right, through my characters. You see, when we speak about 1850s, the first thing that comes to us is the 1857 war. But then, for in the decades preceding the war, there were conditions that contributed to the situation that led to the war. Now, decades, right from 1820 to 1830, 40 to 50, all these decades were very dynamic, and Indian society saw great changes in those decades. Now, the biggest lesson that we learn from that time is what happens when we give unbridled power to a corporate entity, to a profit centric corporate entity. Now, we all know how the East India Company came in and they had total control over the land and the taxes, arising from the land, and they had monopoly over all the industries and such. So that led to more cash crops replacing the food crops, which again led to famines every 3-4 years, which again led to the Indian populace having been forced to being shipped out to Suriname, Guyana, and Mauritius and other plantations to work as indentured labor. So it's like a waterfall effect. So these things, these decades preceding the 1850s, they impacted the Indian society in an irreversible way. And India was opened up to the world. There were a whole world of opportunities, and Indians started traveling all over the world to work. And we find evidence of that in today's populations in Mauritius and such places. Those people are the descendants of the indentured labor who went from India at that time. So these events changed other countries' demographies as well. So as I said, I did around 2 years or 3 years of research before I started writing. And as someone said, it took me 4 years to write and finish it. And the research was, all throughout. And the more I research into it, the more I'm immersed into that era. So the research should be such that we are able to see through eyes of people living in that era. So my characters live in that era, and they face such situations, and through them I bring these events alive. And I
Right.
try to, these are timeless lessons, what happens when there is no corporate governance and such. So there is much that the modern man can learn from these events. So that is one other
Right.
objective of me of writing this.
Right. So,
But
since we are in the, yeah, Vishwas, you can go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just said it's awesome. I really loved his research and his book.
Yeah.
Nice.
So since
Thank
you're in the last 5 minutes of our allotted time, so I would just like a quick comment on what does mythology mean to you. So we can go around and you can give me a quick comment on what does mythology mean to you.
So see before we answer that question, you have to answer what do you mean by mythology.
Yeah, that's why I asked what does mythology mean to you.
So
So I want
so
your perspective.
so see, the mythology as a generic term, it encompasses any Indic literature, anything, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Itihas, and everything that Brahmanas, Aranyak, everything is mythology. So so once you bracket them in, and whereas in the Indic religions, there is a huge classification how you classify these texts. But the common man, when you talk about the common man, when you say mythology, what comes to your mind is the itihas, what we say, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the Purans.
Okay.
So the Purans, from which most of our stories are drawn, like the Shiv Puran, the Bhagavatam, all that. So that is what comes to one's mind, and when we talk about mythology.
Thank you. Varun?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is pretty short. For me, mythology is something that's grounded in history. But I think, as all my panelists would agree, the best stories are ones people like. And so, not always is a historical story a likable story. And so, I think mythology has aspects of likability, which actually, not to take us full circle, but back to your first question, I think there's usually a tinge of fictionalization that gets added to get a good story. A romance angle, an enemy angle, exaggerations of emotions. So I think mythology encompasses all of that at the end of the day.
Vishwas?
See, mythology as a term, it's fine, right? So people talk about it like a history. That's an Indian history that we have got. They get political about it and all of that. Um, but for us, I think it's more of our culture. That's what it is. I think it's ingrained in us. These stories are ingrained in us, and we are living embodiments of mythology because the stories, they have been passed from one generation to another. It's basically been folklore. It's been like oral history that what we've had, and it's come through so many generations, thousands, like I'm sure hundreds of generations, thousands of generations, whatever. And it's basically, I believe it has to have some sort of truth, especially the larger ones have to have some sort of truth. So they have to have some kind of historical realism there, basically. And of course there are many offshoots on top of it, which makes it
Right.
a fantasy, and romanticism on top of it. That's what makes it amazing. So yeah, so I think instead of getting too, what do you mean, theoretical about it and getting to the, how do we frame it and stuff, I think we just need to enjoy our culture and celebrate it by making it amazingly fresh. And that's what, see, what is it like, every generation has contributed to mythology. So
Right.
we need to do our own thing to it. So
Right.
we need to add our own flavors on top of it.
Yeah. So that quick comment on what does mythology mean to you?
On mythology, I completely agree with what the others say. If I say, it would just be repeating what the others said. But how I see it is, I see it as a source of learning and growth in terms of morality and development, and I see it as a source of great self-identity and inspiration.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Siddharth, and thank you all the panelists for joining. Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Vishwas, for being here. And thank you, Flipping Pages and Book Your Books, for organizing this and letting me moderate this session. It was great fun talking history, fiction, mythology, and myth with you. And I hope that we all get to read your books really soon. And that is me, Siddhant, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Siddhant.
for having
Nice
us.
to see you again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Yes.
Siddhant.
Hope to see
Great
you.
being here. Bye.
Thank you.